I am live, it looks like, on this rainy day. Let me do something here. Oh, and that's going to have to do. All right, guys, it's another rainy Sunday morning. Big overcast outside. Chill in the air. Fall's around the corner. Halloween is coming. Hey, what's up? John Jones is out there. What's going on? All right, we got people piling up in here. I'm actually going to be like sort of talking about a topic here where I'm one of those people go back and look at my videos, look at this channel going back, creeping up on a decade, which is kind of funny off and on. And usually I'm like a stickler for like accurate comic book history. Try not to get misinformation out there. Always correcting things or something like not totally anal about it and stuff. The things that kind of set me off are like when there's books out there that people turn into keys when they're inaccurate as to why they're made into keys. Swamp Thing number 25 is the one that really gets up in me and their stuff. All right, guys, I've got people coming in and dropping out. Can you hear me? Is everything okay? Okay. Let's just start there. Give me a little feedback there, and then I'll continue if you can hear me. If not, I'll just have to start this over if I don't see anybody comment. I'll type it in. See if anybody gives me some feedback there. All right, guys, nobody's telling me I'm not being heard, so we'll go from there. But one of the things I was going to do is this big, extravagant video on the Legion of Superheroes and talk about Bendis's Legion of Superheroes. Hey, good morning, not Tommy. All right, cool. Can you feel me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Right. I was going to do this great, big, huge video on Bendis. And one of the things that I've noticed where we're at the end of a decade, and I'm one of those people, every decade ends up getting its own identity. So we're kind of coming to the end of whatever pop and culturally phenomenon has happened over this last decade and stuff. And to tell you the truth, man, it's been absolutely horrible if you really immerse yourself in it, I think. This depends on how much drama you like. You know what I mean? Things that you can talk about. It all started for me a couple of years ago when they pulled a variant cover for Batgirl where the Joker was painting a smile on Batgirl. And that was to me the beginning of it. I actually got quoted on Entertainment Weekly's website. I actually got a Vox.com article sort of about something that I started on a petition to bring the cover out because, I'm against censorship. But it was a whole completely different world where that purity of just fighting censorship and stuff, there was so much more going on. And people were coming at the channel and stuff, feminists from Australia, this weird crowd that come over from Gamergate and stuff that were starting to take a list of what people were watching and not watching on certain channels they didn't approve of and things like that. And it exploded from there. You had SJW talk, you had shitlords all over YouTube that, would go after that stuff. I mean, there's really a big history that can go back for 5 years. And then about a year before Comic Gates became a thing, I did my videos. One went viral, and the other one did the sequels. I did a 3-part thing, did pretty good, and I was on the verge of actually being kind of YouTube famous there for a little bit. And believe me, I'm saying that sarcastically, because some big channels that were big shitlord channels at the time, and it's amazing how many aren't around anymore, contacted me, and I actually got to see the message board. Came to find out that they would find videos and topics and kind of plan who was doing what. I mean, I really had the curtain pulled back, and I'm like, I just can't do this. Then a year later, Comicsgate hit, became a thing, and there's a lot of people that thought that I was going to jump on that, and there's a lot of people who were like, he's on the verge, and I really got I don't want to say harassed, but I really had some people at my heels when it comes to messages, my channel. They tried to take my channel down twice, and a lot of weird things happen. So I kind of backed up. I'm like, this is nuts because I spend 90% of my life on the real in the real world, 5% sleeping, and then 5% is probably this stuff for the fun on the side of it. So when it came time to talk about this, when it comes to comics gate, and yeah, I mentioned it and stuff like that, I just didn't trust the people who were in charge of this. To me, it was a necessary evil. I kind of compare it to the unions of the 30s. You know, mines and factories and stuff had child labor. They would send in kids to crawl around machinery and they would lose fingers because of their size. You were worked to death. You had no holiday pay. You had no time off. There was no set time that you can only work 8 hours, 40 hours a week. They would work you till you died and stuff like that. And you'd get nothing paid back, and things like that. So when unions came in, yes, it was needed, and there was a lot of great things to it. If you got a job and you get vacation time and you get overtime or anything like that, that's what was good that came out of it. It really needed to be called out. But what happened with the unions, there's a lot of people that are against them because all of a sudden they started getting Teamsters. People came in there and they got union dues, and all of a sudden it became a business and they got paid. And I'm so glad I didn't jump into Comicsgate because it has become a business. Now, that's not good nor bad, but you're making money. Once you made money and once you let professionals, it's like having a CEO of a company become part of the union, right? There's a conflict of interest there. It's just history repeating itself. It's context. It's the same thing. But anyway, the whole point of me bringing all that up is sort of because I was about to do a video about what they've done with the Legion. And my take, which I knew was not going to be heard, was they have wasted a great opportunity at DC to go into the next decade with something brand new and to build up on it, in my opinion, right? Instead, they're doing what's become a cliche of the last 5 years or more of we're going to take these same characters and we're going to come in here and change them up, and we're going to change their skin color and sexual orientation, all these things that are actually just aesthetics and not the heart of the characters. And the Legion is the one that they've been very careful about. If you watched on how they handled it, right? I think they've seen this marketing that they've done in the past with Marvel and things, and the backlash and Comicsgate and things going on, and they've circled their wagons, and now they're taking a different approach on this. To announce this Legion of Superheroes, Bendis has been on late night television. They've had a few articles from mainstream entertainment places like Hollywood Reporter or something like that, and things like that. And I've always said that I do not, before all this, I've always said I don't like Brian Bendis on superheroes. I love his crime comics. I like it where he kind of mixes, where the main, theme, the main genre is crime versus what he does with superheroes. Because, I read his stuff, and the only people that really seem to really kind of take up for him are Bendis fans, not fans of the heroes that he works on. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, what can I say in this video? Because going back to my video that SJW's Killing Comics, I really wished I could have titled that better, but we're gonna leave it like it is. If I went back to that, it's been all that what I've said in those 3 videos has been rehashed and rehashed and rehashed by so many people on their channels and stuff that I'm like, I'm just going to say the same thing. And I felt like my message would be lost on what I wanted to say. Is my message important? No, we're just talking about comic books. I have 2 long boxes of comics. I have scattered around on my shelves all kinds of Legion of Superheroes stuff. I have little digests from the early 80s of Legion of Superheroes. I have treasury editions from the 70s of the Legion of Superheroes. My Legion of Superheroes is alive and well. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. It's not really important. It's there if you want it. But one of the things that we're just so tired of is the reboots. And they approach this Legion of Superheroes saying it's not a reboot. It's a soft reboot. And it slowly started becoming a mess. DC has been building up to this Legion and the Return to the Justice Society for like 2 years. And I find it really interesting that they planned bringing them back before Bendis signed with the company of DC. So I'm kind of wondering what went on here. All right. So I found this article and I printed it off, and it's about one of the things that I can't stand is that it's the aesthetics that they're bringing in with the Legion. First of all, we'll look at the aesthetics. Ryan Sook supposedly spent months and months and months redesigning the Legion of Superheroes. All right. I keep holding this up, right? Because I did print it off. And he spent months and months and months redesigning these heroes, and there's some fantastic designs in there. And if you didn't know who these heroes were, these were fantastic. To me, this could have been promoted as like a new team, a new beginning, a new platform, a new send off for DC if you had taken some of these characters. If you look it up online and you look at who I'm assuming is Element Lad right here, that design is so good that it's being wasted, in my opinion, on a character that's already been around for over 50 years. And this could have been a brand new character with their new look. I look at the triplicate girl, right? They got these snazzy 50s sort of themed sci-fi costumes, and gives you the idea of these 3D goggles and stuff, this retro feel to them. And I think that's fantastic. That's a great design, but they're being wasted on characters that has a fan base. I actually know people who have followed the Legion since the 60s with Jim Shooter. And I'm like, this is just wasted. This guy spent all these months working. He probably got a check, and he's not going to get any residuals or anything like these for these fantastic designs. I mean, I hope he got paid good. And he comes in there, and I'm just amazed. And then they turn around and they've recalled two books this month: a Supergirl and a Superman. A Supergirl and a Superman book got recalled um, because I'm trying to figure out how to tactfully say this, but because even the colors in editors got confused on all the changes with them. We'll put it that way, right? Now, what's my deal with Bendis? So to me, I'm like, this is so wasted. There's so much creativity and work that went into this, and this could have been something new. Could you imagine as like the comic book scene sort of like a desert in the last couple of years, where you're so thirsty somebody could hand you a glass of sand, and you're so thirsty you'll take the sand and say thank you because you need water, but you're dying for something. That's how it feels like creatively, how comics have been for over the years, man. It's been soft reboots and changes and not a lot of characterization. There's probably only a handful of books out there that's come out that people actually read and talk about. And I always keep saying, I keep hearing about Immortal Hulk. The Immortal Hulk is just being praised by so much. It's actually bringing some people back. Even if they're buying that one book, they're bringing them back out of those back issue bins and stuff to get this book. They're loving it. Daredevil was like that for a while, but Daredevil was in its own corner, and the people reading Daredevil that gave me feedback came in and were like, no. Then you have Bendis. Bendis comes in here, and I've looked up, I think, with my crowd and stuff, because we read our comics, we talk about our comics, and it's not that there's a dislike for Bendis. It's like, we'll talk about his powers work and, like I said, his crime comics, it's some of that stuff like that. But we're seasoned comic book people that have been doing this for a while, and we have other interest in other books and stuff coming in. Bendis ends up being sort of a I told you so kind of writer for people that we talk to who are younger, who want to do it and stuff, right? We just sort of know better than to buy some Bendis. You know what I mean? And there's always seems like there needs to be this disclaimer. This isn't like bashing Bendis. This isn't a personal attack on Bendis. This is about being a consumer of comic books and deciding what you want to spend your money on. I almost pulled out Bendis's first comics. I think it's Jinx or Goldfish. I can't remember which one it is, but I have it. And Bendis, what I heard when he started hitting the scene is that he sort of failed at writing Hollywood scripts. So he comes into comics, and he's one of the people that started this decompression of storytelling. And I happened to pick up his first indie book, and the first 4 or 5 pages, I'm not exaggerating, is nothing but a dollar bill floating to the ground. Okay. Now, if you get a trade paperback or something like that, that's cool. But to pay full price for a comic book where a quarter of the comic book is just watching something fall, no, that was a heads up. No offense to readers of Immortal Hulk, but wouldn't it have stood out as anything special? It wouldn't have stood out as anything special in past eras. Not saying it's not good, but the bar has been lower significantly these days. Now, Eric Bean, I've said that in my videos in the past, and I completely agree with you. And that goes back to what I just said about the desert. You know what I mean? You're getting a glass of sand in the desert. You know what I mean? But you're so thirsty, you'll take it and stuff because you're thirsty, you're so thirsty, but you love comics and stuff. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. The bar has been lowered so low that, I mean, I actually thought about going back and collecting the entire New Universe run because it was so cheap. You know what I mean? They made the early New Universe books look good. Kickers Incorporated, people. Okay. I'm like, who's bad mouthing business? Let me join in. Okay, Paulo, yeah, come on. Yeah, yeah. So Bendis comes in there. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks. Eric Bean does watch my videos. All right. So that's the whole deal. So yeah, that's maybe that's why some, let's get back on track here because I love this comment, man. You can tell by the smile, man. So we come in there. I just like knowing that what I'm saying is being heard, not misconstrued or torn apart, and when it's very literal what I'm saying, very straightforward. Hey, Gretzky's here, right? So Bendis became big with the Ultimate line back in the early 90s, right? And I remember this being announced. I was there for the Ultimate Universe. And the reason this has popped up is I was on a Facebook Legion of Superheroes group, and I had somebody try to come at me, and they caught me at a moment. It wasn't anything nasty, but I cut their legs off like in 3 sentences. You know what I mean? I was like, bull, right? Because they were trying to figure out what to call this version of the Legion of Superheroes. That's why I was saying I was about to do a big in-depth Legion thing, right? And you can get the miniseries or hardback now of Legion of Three Worlds by Jeff Johns and George Perez, which blows my mind that came out 10 years ago because I still read it regularly. It's so damn good. And you'll get, they fixed all these different versions of the Legion that really became a little bit convoluted and confusing in the 90s and stuff, right? It was good stuff. It was good stuff, right? So the thing about Bendis is, well, let me jump here. But the reason that it got tied in there is all of a sudden, apparently, Bendis has done, supposedly has done an interview where he refers to his version of the Legion as the Ultimate Legion. That ran all over me. Legion of Superheroes, 60 years in comics, right? A fan base that's cult-like, survived over the decades, has its teams, has its stories, very underrated, hasn't been grabbed and smeared and exposed and played out, and you know what I mean, it's been kept alive, and the people who end up writing the book say that book haunts them. You start getting to know these characters, and all of a sudden there's so many characters who start getting to these stories, and a lot of people want to return to the Legion after they're through with their run. And then here comes Bendis, who is kind of making about him like, well, this is going to be my Ultimate Legion. And that ran all over me. I was like, we do not want to tag the Legion of Superheroes with their 60 plus history in surviving and making it and being out there and having their fan following, and tag it to a line of comic books that crashed and burned called the Ultimate Universe. Now, don't get me wrong, Ultimate Universe had some good stories, but if you were there and when they brought in some certain creators, and around the time they brought in what was supposed to be Galactus and stuff, it crashed and burned, people. I mean, there were so many people upset with what they were doing. I mean, you think Comicsgate in the last couple of years have been bad. This was the predecessor to that, with the people who were like, what are you doing to our Ultimate books? I think it was Jeff Loeb that came on there, and that's when things really became a mess, I think. Okay. We're going back almost 15 years. I have the trade paperback. I like the joke about each lightning lad having a different way of pronouncing his home planet when it's named. Yeah, that's what I mean. In Paulo, I'm glad you liked that joke, because that was a joke about people who were Legion fans who were always trying to figure out how to say other words and other planets and things like that in the book. I mean, that was a Legion of Superheroes in joke. If you've been a fan for a long time, it was awesome. Um, so what Bendis did on the Ultimate line that kind of made him is that they were going to reboot the comics of the 60s, starting with Spider-Man, and they were supposed to be in a reboot for the new generation, take place. What happened if the Marvel Universe started in the late 90s and stuff, right? This actually goes back to what Jim Shooter wanted to do for, I think, the 25th anniversary of Marvel, was just reboot all the books, they kind of stole his idea and put it into motion, you know, over a decade later and stuff, right? So it was kind of cool when it came out, and there's people that loved it. Now that's the whole thing. If there's a soul, and they made sure to let you know that this Ultimate line of comics was separate from Marvel, that they even told you. Bendis was one of the people that even told you that this Ultimate Universe will never cross over with the Marvel Universe. So when Secret Wars came out a couple years ago and they merged all their universes, had their own Crisis on Infinite Earths, if you will, it was they did all this. They did it. They crossed it over. Mike Morales came in into the regular Marvel Universe, right? A lot of work just to get one character in there, right? But what killed me as I started reading this is that Bendis was getting a lot of acclaim that I didn't think he really deserved, because all he was doing was cherry picking 30 years of Spider-Man stories laid out for him. He was just rearranging the pieces. He didn't paint the picture. This wasn't original work. And then you had Mark Bagley working his butt off on that book, delivering, so, Bagley, is sort of, to me, out there on this stuff, right? So Bendis comes in and all of a sudden this Ultimate Universe stuff is just them cherry picking stuff, right? And I didn't like the idea of that. I'm like, something's not right here with that. Now, to somebody who just reads comic books and is the casual reader or whatever, don't think these things. That's cool, man. They're putting out this cool book. And then finally, things started clicking with me. It's been happening since DC 52 and the Superman lawsuit with DC, the Siegel Schuster family with DC about Superman rights and stuff like that. But here's the interview from CBR that Bendis did, and here was the line that got me, right? Bendis recently sat down with Den of Geek to discuss a wide range of topics on the reboot. They finally admitted to reboot, or at least that's what the article says, right? When asked about what about the Legion appealed to him as comic book writer, he replied, "It is a very dense and rich sci-fi universe. Paul Levitz, Keith Giffen, Mike Grell, Jim Shooter, so many creators have added to it over the years. And when we're into what we're getting to do with all these seeds, it's similar to what I did with Ultimate Spider-Man, which is cherry pick the best thing about the characters in the worlds and put them in this beautiful stew of everything that's great about the Legion and put it out in a modern story. That's what my job on Ultimate Spider-Man was. And I realized, oh my God, the Legion doesn't exist here. We can create the Ultimate Legion, for lack of a better word. You're a freaking writer. Your job is to find better words. Okay, that ran all over me. This is literally like every era of Legion. All the best part, put it into ours. All the parts that are the most inspiring, the most hopeful, the most story motivated. Now, he's really jacked up. He's promoting the book. I'm sure a lot of what he's getting said is pre-approved with the way things are. Dan Didio, about a year or so ago, started asking creators and people in the business to start keeping their problems in-house, in the family, so it doesn't get out on social media, because of all the nastiness that also came from creators in the comic book business. We know all about it. There's tons of videos. People have documented. People have gone through the Twitter and all that stuff, right? So there's no doubt in my mind there's a lot of things that are probably being said that are pre-approved. But I have a huge problem with collecting comics for so long where you never knew what was happening sometimes, right? DC's approach through Jeanette Kahn in the 80s were comics is that she approached that it's art first, okay? Jeanette Kahn ran this DC Comics for over 25 years. And she approached it through art first. That's why we got Watchmen. That's why we had creators like Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller, Alan Moore, Garth Ennis, Grant Morrison, and things like that, and why these characters and things were able to happen. This is why we got a fantastic Swamp Thing run from Alan Moore. This is why we got Batman Year One and Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that. It was art, creative, and stuff, right? And now we're at the part where I'm going to like draw a line in this video right here. Everything I'm going to say after this is kind of speculation. I wished I had my X-Files figures behind me and stuff, right? Because this is completely, I have no proof. This is probably, it may not be true. It may have seeds of truth, but we're going to take the facts and see what's been painted on here, right? So we have a Legion of Superheroes where Brian Michael Bendis is admitting they're just going to be cherry picking over 60 years of comic books and taking the best parts, right? Why would you do that? Why, seriously, why would you do that when it's been shown that creativity and original stories and things are going on. Well, let's go back to the lawsuit with the Schuster and Siegel family, the family of the people who created Superman. That finally got settled. And what they did, which is what kind of led to the Legion of Three Worlds, it all ties back to the Legion somehow if you're reading comic books, was Superboy ended up being completely and totally owned by DC. It's different of the character of Superman. If you know comic book history, there was Superman, and he didn't start becoming Superman until he was already an adult. And then all of a sudden, they came out with this comic book. They wanted to get with kids, attract more kids to comics. So we got Batman's Robin and a toned down Batman, a teen sidekick, and then all of a sudden we got a Superboy. Superboy, if they had any kind of anything going on there where you could had a continuity back then, Superboy didn't make sense, which is why John Byrne took him out in the 80s. But anyway, but it turns out that what they did is that was a derivative. It's not the original character. So all of a sudden we get DC 52, which turned out to be a poorly planned event where they just kind of tweak all the characters and change some of them where you couldn't recognize them, and did little costume changes where everybody looked like they had little lines on their armor and stuff. And what they did is they ended up becoming derivatives of the characters. Now we're all about rights and money and royalties and things like that, because I actually saw some comic where the Superman that debuted in DC 52 was a derivative, and it was his first appearance was the DC 52 DC Superman #1 or whatever it was he came out in, right? Action #1, whatever it was. And it was a complete disaster to where DC eventually apologized for doing that. Meanwhile, over at Marvel, we start seeing all these characters get changed, and they're saying it's part of a movement of social justice and awareness, and in all those words, inclusive and all the stuff like that. And in the middle of this, Friedrich, the guy who co-created the Ghost Rider, who rides the motorcycle and stuff, they go after him, and all of a sudden he's not even allowed to draw a character he co-created at conventions to make some money, and things like that, right? It turns out it's all about money. So the conspiracy to me is that it's like they don't want new things. They're trying to rehash, reinvent, and keep from having new stuff pop up so they don't have to pay royalties and stuff, right? Then you wrap all this up over the years and stuff to where a couple months ago, Dan Didio made the announcement that DC is going to be cutting their line of comics, and he blamed the talent pool not being there. But he also said there's such a glut of stuff out there that they started pulling back on their trades and stuff, right? I think they're doing this because they're going to start rehashing the stories. They don't want us older customers and stuff because we're not going to buy this stuff. He went off on the facsimile editions of comic books. Dan Didio went after, the facsimile edition of comic books outselling new comic books. Why? Why? If this is working and this stuff is selling, and you're in a business of selling things, wouldn't you want to make money? That the Gary Frederick story is heartbreaking. Yeah, that's right, Tom Bakley. Yeah, the Gary Frederick story is heartbreaking. There's all kinds of stories about that. A lot of what I'm saying here is I could really do the whole thing where I look crazy, where I get the board behind me and I start getting the yarn and the articles and all the stuff, and I can really start connecting a lot of things. That's why I use the word conspiracy. Again, I want to say this may not be true, but when you paint a picture of what's going on, it blows my mind. So here's an article where Bendis is sitting here saying they're going to be cherry picking stories and characters and stuff from the Legion. Are we going to get anything original? Ryan Sook, the artist, again, it just blows my mind that he's got some great uh, redone costumes in there, some great design work and stuff like that. To me, that this should be something new. This could springboard a whole new era of DC and stuff going into the new decade there, if you will. I think people are so hungry for comics and stuff, like what somebody said about the Immortal Hulk. Not really, it wouldn't be anything that would blow anybody away back in the day, and I agree with them. All comics had most of the comics were outstanding. You know what I mean? Like they each had their identity. People were at least trying to do original stories and stuff, and it's when they try to rehash and revamp the past that there's a problem, right? So I really think that's what's going on. They don't want the facsimile editions to come out because it reminds people of the stories. They're limiting their trades so people don't get, read the stories that they're probably going to rehash and things like that. And it keeps them, it's like music. A lot of artists in the music industry will re-record the songs that made them famous on new masters so they can own it and they don't have to pay, the people who that pay people, for residuals and royalties and stuff like that from those, right? Ozzy Osbourne and his wife did it to Randy Rhoads. Okay, I mean, this is real stuff. This is real. These are real business practices and stuff. And I just can't help but wonder if that's what's going on with the comics and stuff, right? It's almost heartbreaking. If you don't believe that things are being rehashed and stuff like that, things that sell and stuff like that, I got a little example here. A lot of comic book collecting today has been pointed out to me as being like people who collected old baseball cards, sports cards, trading cards, and stuff. They get the covers, and a lot of people are slabbing it and stuff like that, right? So here's my Nick Fury Agent of Shield #4 signed by Steranko, and here's all the tribute covers. Homage, if you will. That's signed by a pseudonym and stuff, right? And all this stuff. And if you go through there, they've always rehashed stuff. Some artists have always seriously done homage to people and stuff, and then it's been done to make the money, get the sales. Marvel for years, Axel Alonso ended up getting removed because of it as editor in chief and stuff. The rehash #1s over and over and over of books like Captain Marvel and things like that were so the quarterly reports would look good when it came to the stockholders and the board and all that stuff, right? It was all manipulation of numbers and figures and sales to look good. This is very interesting. DC been cutting back on trades, absolute and omnisses due to this. Maybe that's what I mean. I'm put it out there. This is just how the canvas is starting to get painted. Ever since that lawsuit with the Schuster and Siegel family finally came to a conclusion and stuff, we've seen some crazy stuff in print, reboots, soft reboots, changing of the characters and stuff. And it's all, but what happened, in my opinion, is that the comic book companies didn't take into account the culture and the things that were going on online with fandom and stuff, right? You had Gamergate come out there. You know what I mean? You had SJW shitlords. You had all this thing going on with the young kids politically and stuff, and they came in and they ended up getting a foothold in the comic book industry. If you think the Milkshake crew was the victims and stuff, you are way off and stuff, right? And stuff like that. They came in and it turned nasty. And then I've had people bring up to me that this is the new marketing of the 2000 teens, if you will, the trolling and stuff like that, feeding into it. It's almost became a symbiotic thing. It was almost like they were showing off by raging against the old men or something, right? It didn't work. I mean, it didn't work, and that's where we are. Um, so that's what I mean. I mean, there's enough pieces there, much like Michael Bendis taking 30 years of Spider-Man and saying that they're taking 60 years of the Legion of Superheroes, and they're taking those pictures and taking them apart and just keeping the best pieces and making a whole new picture, a whole new puzzle, if you will. That's what my conspiracy is, right? All these pieces fit, but they could also fit other ways. You know what I mean? I hardly ever really do something like this, but it's come to a point where it's really hard to enjoy the hobby if I get into what's going on now, right? Bleeding Cool, Newsarama, CBR a little bit and stuff like that. They're about clicks. Their job is to come up, and it used to be a report of the news, comic book news. Or back in the days when you had the magazines, you had time to do interviews and type up things and see what's going on out there and come up with themes and stuff. Now it's like they have to kind of make the news and stuff. What I mean, make it up or something, or find something that's going to get people to click and stuff, right? And find little words and things like that to make it clickbait and stuff, but still try to look like they're journalism and stuff, right? Anything that's going on modern stuff like makes it really hard to come on here. Now, at the beginning of the video, I know a lot of people's come on and stuff like that, and I'm not exaggerating. I do say it, I roll my eyes, but I was at the verge of becoming YouTube famous, and I'm so glad I didn't. Seeing how so many things have crashed and burned in the infighting, and then there was like comic book industry people who did get on Twitter and get into these big rants with people in comic book gate and stuff like that, and it was just for attention. It looks like it really came off pathetic and attention. And then you had people dropping off of Twitter and stuff because they were going too far. And the companies were like, "Shut up! You're just fueling the fire. You're giving them what they need and what they want." And it's happening on both sides. It's on both sides. You got to come up with, you're on YouTube, you got a job to get the clicks, get the views and stuff like that. So it's not an evil thing. I'm not acting like it's evil. I'm just saying you just kind of got to use your head a little bit, that people need to maintain their channels and stuff, right? So they kind of look for things to make videos about. um Amazing Spider-Man 300 cover had been repeated so many times again. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's one where you can kind of pick and choose. That is an iconic cover, and it's been homaged many, many, many times, and there's times it's been cashed in on. I think you can tell the difference a lot of the times, of what's going on here, where somebody's just doing it and stuff, right? When they put Doc Ock on that cover, when whatever comic book that was, they did Amazing Spider-Man 300, and it was a Doc Ock taking the place of Spider-Man. That was a cash in, But when McFarlane did it for his Spawn series, it was a little bit of both. It was a little tongue in cheek and stuff because it was McFarlane's design and stuff, right? I mean, that's one of the fun of comics, is to get in there and talk about that stuff, homage covers and things that have come in and stuff, right? But it just kind of shows you how the industry can recycle itself. Do I check out cartoonists? Do I check out cartoonist kayfabe? I've checked out one or two of them, and I think I might have them on Facebook and stuff, right? And these guys are in the industry. These guys, I got nothing bad to say about them. I met Tom Scolioli at Scioli at comic book convention. I've got some stuff signed by him with a funny story and stuff, right? But my problem is when I watch those guys, they're doing nothing that we didn't do back in the day when we started all these comic book channels and stuff, right? I used to have a show called Finally Designed with a guy named Constant Bromstar, which I think blows what they do away. But Constant Bromstar and I were put together by fans who wanted us to do it, and we knew the things that we loved, and we had a real passion for it. It was lightning in a bottle. It's like something I wouldn't try to duplicate or anything, right? It's one of the few times I'll toot my own horn on stuff like that, because people still remember that show. Constant Bromstar had it on his channel, and they're not there anymore, but I really wish they were, because I would go back and watch them. And we go back and forth so much and stuff that I would say things and bring up memories and stuff that I didn't remember it. So when I watched it about 5 or 10 minutes into it, it was like I was watching a whole new show. You got into this zone in your mind where it's almost like you're possessed by your memories and stuff, and you're not, stuff like that. So cartoonist kayfabe, I say go check them out. I mean, they're talking, the 2 or 3 videos I watched, they're talking comics, but I think it's a compliment to say that they're doing exactly what we did back in the day when this stuff was early. Early back in the day, for when it was a comic book community. Um, Haller, are the doomsday clock delays intentional? See, that's just it. Everything they do is suspect in my mind. That it feels like there's always a reason for this, right? Are the delays intentional? I definitely think they are, but the one I can't figure out is the Shazam delays. They're both Jeff John books. I think DC had a plan and everything was in line, and then all of a sudden Jeff John gets a promotion or whatever it was to go somewhere else, and all of a sudden his books are getting delayed and stuff. I think they've shifted gears. I think the NDO or somebody has stepped in and say, no, we want our universe to go this way. And I think it's starting to become, I think they've done a better job of hiding their dumpster fires, if that makes any sense, right? I mean, the 2 books that came out, it was this outrage, and I don't blame them. The article I saw about the Superman 14 and whatever the Supergirl book is getting pulled because they miscolored some Legion of Superheroes people. I wish I had a more sensitive way of saying that. The outrage culture would go after that, or is it part of the marketing? So are the delays intentional? They've got to be. I don't know. I don't know any other reason they wouldn't have this lined out for years, knowing this was coming. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they're changing what is originally in the Doomsday Clock books. Hopefully, unless there's a big Legion of Superheroes moment in like number 12 or something where they pop up or something, and maybe they're having to redraw and recolor those. Who knows? But yeah, I think they're intentional because they shifted gears, and hopefully those books. They're going to try to catch everything up by fixing what they're doing. If I had to guess, I always like to point out McFarlane recycled his Mr. Bones design at Infinity Incorporated when he created Spawn. Oh, I got to go back and look at that. I love, yeah. Trying to think who it would be. You've caught me off guard here, man. I've been DC, Marvel, conspiracy. I could, yeah. Okay. Doomsday Clock delays killed the momentum. Yeah, we're 2 years in that book coming out. I think, and I think I think I talked about this months ago and stuff. I'm just going to finish the book because I finished it and stuff. The thing about it is that I kind of think it's like the comment that was made about Immortal Hulk. I don't think it's that good, but in today's market where the bar storytelling wise has been so low, it's a great read. Satisfying read is how I think it would be. I don't feel like it's a sequel to Watchmen or anything, nor should it have been, nor do I think that was their intention. I think Bendis has editorial ears and Johns is in the out. Oh, I think Bendis has Bendis is in and Johns is out. That's a very good point. That's Pogmania. Yeah, I think that's definitely something worth talking about, at least timing wise. Again, everything in context, in timing. What I feel like I just have to keep a disclaimer that we're just talking and speculating here. We're not reporting any news. I haven't read Doomsday Clock since issue 6 or 7. Stay Puff 83. You're a grown man and stuff like that. But when I get my last 2 issues of Doomsday Clock, I'm gonna sit down and read the whole thing all over again. I have read up to issue 10, but the way I get my comics, I'll get I don't know, every 4 to 7 months. It's gone as long as a year before. I'll get all my comics in. I order them on through an online store. When they accumulate to $85, they get shipped to me for free. So I'm just patient and wait. I end up reading chunks of books, all the time. I probably read the first 4 issues of Doomsday Clock and then the next 4, then 2, something like that. Delays have killed the book. Yeah, and absolutely. And that hurts the business and stuff, right? I think we're all just kind of sick of it being obvious that comics are hurting. They could be doing better, and people in the business are just trying to act like there's nothing wrong. Every now and then an article will come out, or an artist or a writer or something will kind of admit that there's a mess going on somewhere, or they haven't seen anything like this before, or something's going on. But you always have to be suspect of that because they have to promote themselves for a career. And could they also, just be having some sour feelings, if you will, towards some people in a company or something. You know what I mean? What's that guy's name? Cena Grace, the guy that wrote Iceman and stuff. And then the lady who, oh my God, I can't think of her. The one that wrote the Mockingbird issues about feminism and stuff. They totally threw Marvel under the bus. You know what I mean? So that's also suspect. So I'm trying to tell you, man, there's not a lot of good guys out there. Not, it doesn't mean that they're bad guys, but they're definitely not a lot of good guys. Both sides use the same tactics. Some people are just a bit more charismatic about it. Chelsea Kane, yeah, that's it. Yeah, Chelsea Kane, and it is Cena Grace. Am I saying that name right? Since this is going to be on YouTube for a while. Yeah, those two totally tried to come off like victims and stuff, and tried to play like they were discriminated against or something. It was unreal. It was unbelievable. Just a whole lot of entitlement there. Like just because they were hired to write a book, they sort of thought the whole company is supposed to bend to them or something. And that's what I'm trying to say. You can take up for a company, like that when somebody with the get my coffee megalomania comes in and thinks that you're privileged to have me. Writers have too much power. Industry has totally shifted since the 90s. The industry needs something alone along the line of new Preacher, Hitman, Sandman type of feel books. Yeah, John Jones. Okay, Pogmania said something about the writers having too much power. Um, I don't know if it's writers in general or it's just certain people. You know what I mean? Who come with a fan base and or a name, if you will. They come with a somehow they come with a little bit more celebrity. You know, but I mean, that's one of the things we could discuss and to hash up. Then John Jones is the one that said that the industry needs something along the lines of a new Preacher, Hitman, Sandman type of feel of book. I'll even throw Starman out there. When one of the reasons back in 1991, an amazing 1990, 91, something amazing happened, and it was with Nickelodeon. Ren and Stimpy came out and it was creator driven cartoons all of a sudden. And Ren and Stimpy was huge and stuff. And everybody acted like this was an amazing thing of a creator driven cartoon. But John Chris Belushi goes back to the Bakshi days and even back to the 50s and stuff like that. Popeye. I mean, he's just the whole history of it and stuff. That's how it used to be. All he was doing was bringing up something that had all been done before. He brought it back to life. And that's the thing about comics. Comics has this amazing resuscitation in it. This this let me think of the word. Comic books can always come back to life with a shot in the arm of something good. And what makes it good are these books. Neil Gaiman's Sandman, right? The Garth Ennis's Preacher. These books that say something. These books where it almost feels like these writers, that they had one story to tell before they die. What is the story? It won't come in, and they have freedom to it. And like it or not, a lot of these books, even though they say something, are political free. And that's one of the things I hope going into the 90s and stuff, that stuff goes back into moderation and stuff. People think that just because they can say comic books have always been political, I think they're missing a whole lot of stuff about subtext, context, subtlety, that one story where they had something to say to point out what was going on in the time that that comic book came out. When Nixon was president, there was a pretty powerful Captain America story that came out about the Secret Empire, I think, or something like that. That was in context for the 70s. And that's the thing about it. When these books came out, these were people being creative, expressive. This was their book, getting it out there and stuff. So yeah, we definitely need something that lasts over a year, that lasts over 2 years. People will, there's very few. It's kind of crazy that we're having Spawn 300 around the corner. People want to celebrate that. It's an indie book reaching 300. So yes, in that context, it should be celebrated, but they want to compare it to Cerebus. Like this book is going to beat Cerebus 300. Cerebus 300 had Dave Sim on every issue. Okay, it's not the same. Uh, context is in, and Cerebus is a very political book. Hold on, my computer's trying to restart. All right. Nothing is political free, but if your comic's not entertaining, then it's just preaching. That's a good point. Pogmania, that's a good point. I think Pogmania has a point there. This Pogmania, you might want to start you a channel up. You got some things to say that I would love to hear you expand on. I don't think, and then Paulo Costa, I don't think writers have too much power. I think middle management are too meddlesome, and editors don't know how to do their job, which is to make the product attractive to buyers in the long term. Eric Breen, Chelsea was attacked by SJWs for not including trans girls in a book about girls having periods turning them feral. Well, that whole book just sounds like it'd be a mess to begin with. You can't serve two masters and try to make everybody happy. And I know that might be misconstrued about the subject matter and stuff. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You can't make everybody happy. And I think that's part of the problem. Then some people just like creating a lot of chaos and then walking through it like they're in the eye of the hurricane. Some people just like to stir shit. The industry needs something. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. A lot of good talking going on here, guys. So, guys, I'm going to take a few more questions. Today, it's so funny. Last yeah, Eric Breen caught what I did. You saw what I did. Yeah, I didn't think if you notice, I kind of looked to see if anybody was going to catch that. But anyway, but today it's kind of funny because last week's show ended up getting a little sidetracked, which was a lot of fun for about 20, 25 minutes on wrestling. Wrestling, Rasslin. You know what I'm talking about. And I'll touch on this in a minute. So today, me and the lady are going to go out and have a little lunch, and we're going to go watch some ECW wrestling through some company called ACW or something. They are going to have New Jack, Sandman, who I've met before, Shane Douglas, who I've met before, C.W. Anderson, Gary Wolf. I think we're going to have Shane Douglas versus Gary Wolf. If you go back to the ECW days, that was the gimmick where Gary Wolf's neck was broke by Shane Douglas. New Jack versus C.W. Anderson. So I'm hoping that's some hardcore stuff there. And it seems like there's somebody else. And then they're going to have a battle royal, and then they're going to have a women's match, and then I think a bunch of local wrestlers and stuff. So that's at 3 o'clock today. In VIP tickets were $25, but I'm not real. We're gonna go with the floor seats. It's real cheap. It's in Princeton, West Virginia. If you want to go check it out at a rec center or something. A friend of mine that owns a shop called Spookables put it on his Facebook, and that's how we found it. Okay, I just got the Spawn Service crossover in the early Spawn days. That's a classic issue. That is an issue that stands out as not being in continuity for Spawn or Cerebus, but it's a work of art that talked about the state of the industry at the time. Love him or hate him, Dave Sim can write a story that symbolically, dreamily, surreally will really make an impact on you and put you in the mindset of what was going on at the time. So I think it was Spawn number 10. I got 3 or 4 copies. I love that's one of the books where I'll pick up if it's like in a quarter or 50-cent bin. It's in decent shape and stuff. I just enjoy it. It's one of the few Spawn books that I can go back and actually read. I got rid of a lot of my Spawn there. 605 Saturday Night the Mothership. That's right, man. That's right. Yeah, don't start on the wrestling roll. Sorry, guys. Are you reading the new Sandman line that DC's put out the last year? Okay, Pogmania. I did a video talking about it, and actually, those books are here. I ended up getting the books. I think it was up to the Dreaming number 4 or something, and I had the first issue of the Dreaming and the Sandman Universe Special, whatever came out and stuff. They're unreadable. I thought they were freaking horrible. The only book I haven't read is Books of Magic because I can't take having my heart ripped out again. They were unreadable. It was the first comic book in a long time where I just had to set it down and throw it on the table because I thought it was unreadable. If they've gotten better since issue 3 and 4 of all this series, good, good. If not, I'm going to be getting rid of mine and pretend they never happened. It was horrible. I went in with an open mind. I was down for it. Oh man, I didn't expect it to be actually that bad. So yeah, I didn't like it. Issue 10, Love the Superman panel. Yeah. Yeah, what John Jones has referenced there when it comes to Spawn number 10, with Cerebus in it, is that there's a panel there where it's Superman, and it has like this just sad narration, and it's Superman in shadows. It's perfect. It's perfect. Just enough to where they can't get sued. You know what it is, and the narration that I wish that was right here behind me. I got it in a box over there, man. I might do a whole video on that issue. That'd be awesome. But yeah, there's so many little moments in there and Easter eggs and things that are like that Spawn number 10 with Dave Sim really felt like a rebel was coming out because they had the arms of so many superheroes stuff where it's like right in their face. And they had all these creators with bags over their head and their hands tied behind their back because it's the industry. Another book like that I might grab out is the She Cyblade crossover. It was 2 parts, and a bunch of indie creators came back. And Bone ended up sticking its leg out and tripping the big industry monster. So there's some good books out there where they talk about the industry. All right, guys. Any more questions and stuff? Because this was fun. If not, it's time to take a shower, finish my coffee, go get something to eat, and I guess go watch some wrestling today. All right. Okay, guys. Well, carry on. Thanks for popping in here, and I will check you out later. Be excellent to one another.